Hi guys, today we'll discuss this algebra problem from Waterloo's grade 9 Pascal contest. This is question number 22 from year 2008, and it asks that Ginger walks at a speed of 4 kilometers per hour and runs at a speed of 6 kilometers per hour. She saves 3 3/4 minutes by running instead of walking from her home to her school. What is the distance in kilometers from her home to her school? This is really a question on rates and its relationship with time and total. We know that in general, rates times time is total, or more concretely, speed, which is a rate, times time gives you the total distance traveled, right? Speed is given as distance traveled within a certain period of time. In this case, we could use kilometers per hour, and time must be measured in hours to be consistent with the units of speed. And if you multiply these two together, it should give you kilometers, which is the measure of distance. And of course, you don't have to use kilometers an hour. You can use anything such as meters per second, as long as your units are consistent. So we should know that speed times time is distance, but what about the reverse, right? If I give you distance and speed, can you calculate the time? Or in other words, if I give you distance and time, can you calculate the speed? All right, so being very familiar with the forward and backward relationships is the foundation for this question. Now back to this question. Let's first understand the variables and relationships outlined by the question. So we're given that the scenario is that the Ginger is traveling from home to school, right? And it is a fixed distance. Let's call this D, right? And she has two options. She could either walk at a speed of 4 kilometers per hour. Let's call this SW, the walking speed. Or she could run at a speed of 6 kilometers per hour. Let's call this SR. Right? And the time it takes to walk, obviously, is going to be longer than the time it takes to run. So we know that the time it takes to walk, let's call this TW, is going to be longer than the time it takes to run. Let's call it TR, right? And by how much? The question says 3 3/4 minutes. So right away, we actually see a little bit of inconsistencies in units because your speeds are measured in hours, whereas the time difference is measured in minutes, right? Either you change these speeds to from hours to minutes, or you change this time difference from minute to hour. And in this case, a lot easier to just change one entry. So I'm going to change this from minute to hour. So 3 3/4 minutes, right? Let's first change this into an improper fraction. So 4 times 3 plus 3 is 15. So this is 15 over 4 minutes, right? And to go from minutes to hours, you need to divide this value by 60. So if you divide this by 60, we'll multiply by 1 over 60. It simplifies to 1 over 16 hours. So now the units are consistent. Cool. We still have two variables in this equation, right? And we're looking for D, right? So let's try to substitute these variables with what we know, the speeds, and also in terms of D. We know that speed times time is distance. If you reverse our relationship, time must equal to distance divided by speed, right? So let's start with the walking time. Walking time must equal to the distance traveled, D, divided by the walking speed, which is 4 kilometers per hour. Similarly, for running time, it must equal to the distance traveled, which is still D, over 6 kilometers per hour, right? Let me just erase this part so it doesn't cause any confusion. So D over 4 minus D over 6 is 1 over 16. We have one equation, we have one variable, and we can find a unique value for D. So let's start solving this equation. First thing, factor out the D, right? So you have D times 1 over 4 minus 1 over 6 is equal to 1 over 16. Remember, speeds are measured in kilometers per hour, right? Your time is measured in hour, therefore D must be measured in kilometers per hour. right? So let's simplify this first. The least common multiple is 12, so this becomes 1 over 12. D times 1 over 12 is 1 over 16. In other words, D over 12 is equal to 1 over 16. Multiply both sides by 12 to isolate D. So you have D is equal to 12 over 16 kilometers, right? That's the unit of measure we've been using. And if you want to simplify that, this becomes 3/4 kilometers. And that's the answer.